every single one of you guys has power. You have power in some way, shape, or form, okay? And if you look at the back, like it talks a little bit about power, power through expertise, so that's what you know. Power through resources, that could be what you have. It could be your emotional stability, your connection, so who you know, and then your status, so who you are in the structure. And the structure could be anything. It could be a family structure, it could be in this classroom, it could be in your ministry settings, it could be in society in general, it could be a sports team. In every single one of those structures, you guys have some source of power. So let's just go ahead and kind of identify what that might look like even now, so we can kind of unpack it a little bit. So when we see Westrup and myself and then you guys as students, based on these like definitions of power, what would you say, like what are some of the different types of power that Mr. Westrup has?
Leadership power.
Leadership, yeah. So expertise. No, that's perfect. It is. Yeah. Yeah. So as a teacher, you kind of already have authority, right? Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Connections. How so? Yeah. Both in the school and then in the ministry. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
He's a power to set the mood.
Yeah. That's so true. It's kind of like that status again, right?
Good or bad.
Yeah. What about me? I get to intern here under Westrup. What kind of power do I hold?
Status also.
Yeah.
You're like teacher.
Yeah.
What? Mentor?
Give some power because you've walked the path already, you've kind of done, you put the time in, so there's some power with time.
Yeah. That's good. And like learning as you go. What about you guys as students? What kind of power do you guys have?
Resources.
You have what?
Resources.
Yeah, like what?
Like our abilities.
Yeah.
Physical abilities and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Influence.
Influence, how so?
Like, we can influence one.
Yeah. Yeah. Your ministry teams, or even Westrup and I, if you were like, hey. Anybody else?
I think we can have status if we choose to. If we choose to be a leader.
Yeah. So status, you guys are leaders on this campus, right? And you're leaders in this class. You have status as students. You have some say in the way this class maneuvers and everything. Absolutely. So the whole purpose of that is to recognize that every single one of us has power. Maybe not in the same capacity, maybe not the same types, but in some way, shape, or form we have power, right? And so what we do with that power is really important. We can choose how we're going to use it to bless other people. And you guys are in the service leadership class, and you've chosen to serve and lead people, and you guys do that so well. But we also have this other choice. As we're holding this power, we get to choose how we're going to be motivated to use it, but we also get to choose how we're going to walk in humility with it. Because sometimes it's really easy to take all these things that we have and just kind of like grow a big head, whether we try to or not, right? So we were talking about last week Monday and on Friday of this idea of service being really good, right? We talked about GS and Bug, right, the Good Samaritan, and how as you're going, like there's this sense of like it just being so sweet. We use that term, the sweet intersection, right? This moment where like God's greatest need and your greatest gifts come together, and we get to interact with Him in the service that He's already doing with the people there. And we get to interact with the people who are already doing good and see how we can encourage them and join with them in that, right? But there's this other side, because if we're not careful, then sometimes service can become an unhealthy thing. If we let it build up our pride, if we let it get to us, if it becomes who we are, if service becomes who we are. So let me ask you this, what do you guys think unhealthy service would look like? Yeah.
If you're constantly doing things for other people, but in like the mindset of trying to get satisfaction for yourself, like trying to get praise from others.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look what I did for you, or look at me.
Yeah, that's so good. Yes.
over helping, like when people are able to do it themselves that you think they can't, or just do it for them.
Yeah, so kind of disempowering.
Rather than you having it.
Yeah. Anybody else? Unhealthy service. Yeah.
Doing it because you have to.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes it's like, I know this is the right thing to do, but I don't necessarily want to do it. Any other thoughts?
Do it out of pity,
Mm-hmm.
out
Yeah.
of pity for somebody as opposed to respect.
I feel sorry for you, so I'm gonna help you because you need it more than I do.
Right.
Yeah, Adrian.
Doing it to the point of like burning yourself out, just like serving like students.
Yeah. Absolutely. All of a sudden, like, our identity gets wrapped up in it, right? Absolutely. And so we see these things, and so instead of letting power, did someone else have something? Oh. So instead of service being something that we get to do and something we get to join in with other people in the moment, it becomes our identity, right? Instead of our identity being rooted in Christ and all that we are in relationship to Him, we start, I'm the person who does service. I'm the service person. I'm the Good Samaritan, right? And that's so dangerous because all of a sudden we start relying on other people's approval, on whether or not we succeed, and even our ability to serve. And because of this, we start measuring ourselves, right? Did I do good enough? How am I doing in comparison to how this other person is doing? Am I doing better? Am I doing worse? Did I make a good enough impact? So we're not able to just enjoy what we're doing and be there in that moment. We have to evaluate every little thing we do. And it's so dangerous, right? Because all of a sudden the what ifs start playing in. What if you don't gain somebody else's approval? Does that mean you're going to start burning out because it's just something you need to do? You have to earn it. So maybe you start plowing over other people. Maybe you start disempowering them because you're just seeking to please. Maybe you lose your ability to serve. Maybe you're not able to speak the way you were before. Maybe you weren't able to move or interact the same way. You kind of hear like the stories maybe about someone who like played softball, and softball was their life ever since T-ball, right? And all of a sudden they're getting all the way, they're thinking they're going to get a full ride scholarship. They're this great athlete and their identity is kind of wrapped in this, and all of a sudden senior year comes and they get hurt. Now what? Who am I? What am I supposed to do? And then what if we don't succeed? What if instead of succeeding, what if we fail? Does that make us failures? All of a sudden, when our identity becomes wrapped up in service, we don't just get to sit back and take things as they are and kind of move and flow with others. All of a sudden, we've got to start becoming so self-focused, which you guys know is not the purpose of service, right? So all of a sudden, letting our identity become wrapped up in service prohibits us from collaboration. Because we become so self-focused, all of a sudden, we remember all the power that we guys had and we tighten our grip on it. All of a sudden it's, I've got to keep hold of this. How can I increase my power? How can I keep people needing me so that I can hold on to this? It's like a parent, right? So when there's a toddler, when there's a baby, the parent's got to take care of because the kids can't do that. But as they're growing up, they need to learn to tie their shoes on their own. They need to learn how to give themselves their own food because later in life, the parent's not always going to be there, right? So if the parent always ties the shoes, if the parent always gets them out of trouble, if the parent always is there for them and makes sure they're feeling good all the time, or any of those things, then the kid's not going to learn how to develop those things on their own. They're not going to learn how to become independent or interdependent on other people, right? It's because later on in life, later on down the road, what happens when the parent passes away? What happens when the parent leaves? What happens to the child? What do you guys think?
They don't know how to do anything for themselves.
Yeah. They're lost, yeah. Who am I? How am I supposed to take care of this? Emotionally, they're probably like, I don't know how to handle this. My parent always just told me what to think, what to do, what to say. I don't know how to interact with other people or get myself out of conflict because my parents just always solved it for me. I don't even know how to support myself financially, right? Instead of caring for the child and like wanting the best for them, even if that was a parent's intention, by doing stuff for them all the time, they disempowered them, right? They're strengthening their power and their hold because they want everything to be perfect for this child. In cooperation, we retain hold of our power and we try to strengthen it. But in collaboration, we share power. So I've got expertise, or I've got power, or I've got resources, and you have expertise, power, resources, status, connections. And when we come together and we share those things together, it starts to change us, because all of a sudden you bring new information to the table and I bring new information to the table, and we work together sharing our power to create something even more beautiful, something even more profound. So let's go ahead and jump into the 2 stories in the Bible, and they're both about washing the feet. So before we kind of dig even deeper, there's something kind of important to know about this. Did everybody get one, or is anyone missing? Anybody else? Sorry. Awesome. So in this time, they didn't really wear shoes. They wore sandals. And you gotta think, they're walking in the dirt. They walk everywhere. They don't have a car. They don't have like a train or a bus, right? They walk everywhere. So their feet kind of get pretty nasty. Just like ours would if we were walking around outside all day, right? So what would happen is, when they would come into a home, there would be like water there so you could wash your feet. If you were among more of the poor population, then you would probably wash your own feet. But if you were wealthier and you could afford a servant, then you would have that servant wash the feet, or wash your guests' feet. And that position of servanthood was not something to be aspired to. It was kind of the lowly, like, you're just a servant because you're washing feet. Feet are like not the most beautiful thing, kind of nasty, right? And so we jump into Luke 7, verses 36 to 50, and we see the story of the woman who washed Jesus' feet with her hair and with her tears, right? When we jump in, we see that the Pharisees had invited Jesus into their home, and they're like getting ready to serve him, and all of a sudden this woman finds out where Jesus is. And would anybody like to read verse 38 for us? No pressure. Yeah.
And standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears, and wiped them with the hair of her head, and kissed his feet and anointed them with the ointment.
Perfect. So she sees Jesus, and she's like, oh, this is it. This is him. What can I do? Takes this ointment, gets down, and starts washing his feet. The Pharisees see this, and they're like, shoot, this woman's a sinner. She is no good. If Jesus knew who this woman was, there is no way that he would let her touch his feet. There's no way. So Jesus, kind of being kind of sly, he looks over at Peter. He's like, hey, Peter, you want to hear a story? He's like, yeah, Jesus, tell me a story. And so he jumps in, right? He goes, okay, a certainly moneylender has 2 debtors. One owes 500 denarii, and the other 50. But when neither of them could pay, the debtor, the master, cancels both of their debts. And then he asks this question, right? Now, which of them will love more? And Simon's answer, well, I suppose the one who owed more, right? So it's the idea of when you realize what you've been forgiven of, and when you need to be forgiven more, maybe for other things that you've done, we have this tendency to love more. It brings out this response of like, wow, I see what you've done for me, and I want to be able to do that for others. I want to show you that I love you, and I'm so thankful and appreciative of what you've done, right? And so as we go on, Jesus kind of goes back to the Pharisees and says, look, when I came into your house, you didn't even give me water for my feet. But this woman who you're like bashing, she has not stopped like washing my feet. She's been washing my feet with her tears and with her hair. Normally when they would walk in, they would greet each other with a kiss, right? He goes, you guys didn't even greet me with a kiss. And this woman has not stopped kissing my feet since we got here. You guys didn't anoint my head with oil, but she has not stopped anointing my feet this whole time. Right? And we know why she did this, because in verse 47 it tells us, right? Therefore I tell you, her sins, which they were saying, like, she's so sinful, so her sins, which are many, are forgiven. For she loved much. the reason she's doing all these things, the reason that she's serving, this healthy act of service, is out of love. She understands who Jesus is. She understands where she is in relationship to him. She goes, okay, I'm going to do what I can. Let's take a moment as a class and just do the exercise with recognizing what kind of power she held in this situation. Because remember, she's a woman amongst a whole bunch of Pharisees, a bunch of men. Like, she's already pretty lowly down there, right? So what power does she hold in this story? Resources. What resources? Yeah. The tear, the hairs, the ointment, right? Absolutely. Anything else? What other power might she have? Thinking more along the lines of connection. Who does she know in this story? Yeah, she knows Jesus. So her power is so small. But Jesus, who does have all this other power, and could be like, no, let me anoint your feet, let me take care of you, right? Instead, Jesus gives her a chance to express her love and to use her power. Because let's face it, have you guys ever had something like a knowledge or power of some sort and you've been able to use it or bring others good? And like we talked about, it brings that sensation of, this feels so good. There's fulfillment in that, joy. It's so sweet, right? And he gives her a chance. So we see Jesus letting her serve. But then in John 13, verse 1 to 17, a story you guys are probably so familiar with, we see Jesus washing his disciples' feet, right? So in the passage surrounding it, we see that other people are kind of like having different responses to Jesus. Some people are not believing. The next several verses after this story is when Jesus is going to be betrayed by Judas, right? So all of these people are not really treating him well. They're not recognizing him as like this great king or Messiah, right? And yet in verse 1 we see he loved his home. He loved them to the end, right? So we already talked about the woman doing these acts out of love. Now we're seeing Jesus about to do an act because he loves, right? And then in verse 4 to 5, we see that he's getting ready to wash their feet, right? He lays out the garments, he's getting the towel wrapped around his waist, he's starting to kneel down and get the water. He's just about to wash their feet, right? But before we jump into that, could anybody read verses 3 and 4? Just 3 and then the end of 4 for us.
Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper.
Perfect. What's the motivation behind why he's doing these things? We already said love, but how can he do these things and do them well? What are some of your thoughts? And the Father had given, he knew that the Father had given everything into his hands.
You have like the resources and everything, it's God.
Yeah. So he's able to do it because of the power he's been given, the knowledge he's been given. And then the second half. He knew that he came from God and he was going back to God. Identity. Right? He knew that, remember, this position of servanthood, this position of washing feet was so lowly. It was not something that, someone of his status would do. And yet he was like, look, it doesn't matter what other people think. I'm able to do this and do it well and do it humbly because I know who God has created me to be and I'm okay with that. I know my value and my worth, and it doesn't come from serving and it doesn't come from men. So he goes on, right? Peter. Jesus kneels down, he's getting ready to wash Peter's feet. And you guys know the story. Like, what is Peter's response? Right. No ideas. Let me wash your feet. Who are you to wash my feet? Like, who am I to let you wash my feet, right? So he can't accept, there's something difficult about Peter being able to accept this act of love, right? And Jesus answers, his response is, Peter, you don't understand it now, but one day you're going to understand. One day you're going to understand. And he's like, okay. And so we get to verse 15, 16, which tells us the purpose, the reason why this was so important. And could someone read those 2 verses for us? Thanks, Nicole.
For I have given you an example that you also should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him.
Yeah. So the purpose behind it was not just to clean the disciples' feet because they were dirty. It was showing that this act of service was something we need to do because we're not greater than the person next to us. Servant is not greater than his master. The person being sent is not greater than the one, or than the sender, right? So this whole idea of like, look, there's equal power here, there's shared power here, this idea of collaboration, it's good, it's so healthy. This is the place we need to get to, right? But I'm going to ask you guys this. When you think of the 2 stories, Jesus letting a woman serve him, and then Jesus serving, which to you is more humbling? If you were to put yourself in the story of Jesus, Jesus serving you, would be more humbling. Yeah. Why?
I think because you, like Peter, you expect yourself to, like, I need to serve Jesus, like I need to like get down and wash his feet, but he's saying no, like let me wash yours. Like it's just like a very beautiful picture of you, like.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, you're good. That's good, yeah.
I think too, it's like really humbling to know like Jesus, he has all this power, like God created the world and everything, and then he's coming down like to wash our feet. Like it just shows like how loving and caring God is.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
It's kind of like what she said, he's like the Son of God and he's perfect, so there's no need for him to bow down and wash our feet. We should be exalting him and worshiping him 24/7, and yet he takes a moment to say, wait, let me wash your feet. Which is kind of amazing.
Yeah. So this idea of like recognizing who God is in comparison to who you are and being like, something's backwards here, maybe I'm supposed to be the one. When other people serve us, it kind of puts us in this place of vulnerability, right? Because all of a sudden we're not the one using our control, our power, our gifts, our knowledge. All of a sudden we're letting someone else take over and have that position. When we unpack this idea of like a healthy service, life of service, we've already kind of talked the idea of identity, remembering that, who you are in Christ, and letting that be the root in your motivation, knowing that he loved you first, and so you can go out and love other people, and that your value, in Philippians 2 verse 3, it says, in humility value others than yourselves, and that's saying something, because if you're not valuing yourself, if you're not seeing yourself as worthy because of what Christ did for you on the cross, then you're not going to be treating yourself very well, huh? You're going to be like, I'm not good enough for that, I'm not worthy enough for this. So you're already not treating yourself. So how can you treat someone else better if you can't even value yourself? How can you value them more? So there's this idea of you need to have a healthy sense of value. No, I'm like a son or daughter of Christ, right? So that you can treat others better, so that you can serve them and bring them even more respect, right? And this idea of healthy leadership is not only finding out who you are, not only valuing who God has created you to be, but also learning to collaborate with one another, learning to learn from one another, right? There's this idea of dancing. So when two people dance together, there's like this give and take. Maybe one person is leading at the beginning, and then you kind of move with the music. You kind of like go with it, and then the leadership goes back and forth, right? The goal of collaboration is interdependence. So not becoming independent and just working on our own for good, but becoming interdependent on one another, saying, hey, you're going to use your power, I'm going to use my power, we're going to create something beautiful. And when this happens, we learn to trust one another, go on a deeper level of trust. We learn to have open and honest communication with one another, so that way all of the miscommunications, all of the being threatened by ideas and like, oh shoot, that idea is better than mine, like it just goes because we're working toward a same goal, right? And we're sharing each other's power. And all of this happens, the reason why is because we're being changed in the process. I don't know how to say his name, Milenko Matanovic. It's on the back. If anyone can say it better than me, go for it. He has this quote. He says, you know, engagement is a two-way street. We change in the process. We share an intent together, but the shape of it will be crafted the way jazz musicians craft with each other. It takes courage because I need to allow new information to penetrate my identity. That's pretty heavy. When we're working with other people and they're sharing different viewpoints and different ideas than our own, there's something about us that has to be willing to change for it to work. There has to be something about us that's willing to change in order to let it become even greater. So I'm going to go ahead and pose this question to you guys. In what ways have your identities been penetrated by the ministries you serve at? By the people or the leaders who are there? You know, identities could be even, just the way that you live out being a Christian, what you thought it was or how you acted before.
I think I just have like more of a heart for everybody in general, because at our location, it's not like Judy knows all these people in Compton and he picks them, like, he picks the houses to do based on the person that lives there. Like, it's just based off of a mutual need in the community, and I think I just reach out to more people than I ever have because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of like seeing what they do and being able to practice that as well. Yeah.
feel like I had more compassion just watching like that precious and just like seeing kids in that position. You just want to have just empathy and just sympathy just for like those kids in the position. So I share that out when I'm not in the position.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
State the question again, one more time.
Yeah, in what ways have your identities been penetrated by the ministries that you serve at?
Working with Enjoy, I'm not, like, it's definitely opened my eyes to, like, just, like, not like I was so judgmental before, but it's definitely brought me to, like, a new understanding of, like, different people. Just because, like, the Enjoy people are different doesn't mean, like, they're low in any way, or, like, less of a person than I am. And I think, and just working with them has really opened that, and, like, I was always so, like, tedious and, like, uncomfortable with, like, making challenged people, and, like, now I'm, like, they're my people, like, I just hang out with them, and, so it's, like, definitely brought me to a good place.
Yeah, it's so awesome. It's so awesome. You see how maybe, like, our ideas beforehand get changed.
Yeah.
The way we view people. Yeah. Any last thoughts? No, this is good. This is all super good. It's kind of interesting because we all have different gifts, talents, powers, knowledge, right? And when we get to interact with others, it gives us a chance to use those things to glorify God, to come up with something better. And Mantovic uses this last quote that says, the art of turning differences into gifts is probably the main art of community building. Our differences can be so beautiful when we use them correctly, when we learn to appreciate other people's differences. So for those of you guys who are like, wow, yeah, I'm in a good place, I feel like I'm learning how to balance, I know where my identity's at, and I'm ready to learn what other people have for me, maybe start asking yourself, what areas am I already smart in, what areas of power and knowledge do I already have, and what areas am I ignorant about? Because he also says that we're really smart in some areas, but we're really blissfully ignorant in others. So how can you learn Find places to share what you already know and places where you can learn what other people know, where other people can share their power. And those for you who are like, you know what, I think my identity may be wrapped up in service, then I really just encourage you to find someone to have a conversation with and spend some time reflecting, what Jesus did for you and what motivates you to serve. And go back to just those roots of that so that you can come back to this place of, okay, I'm serving now, not because this is who I am, but this is because it's an act of love back to God. Because, letting your identity be wrapped up in service is only going to leave you with a heart of pride. But in order to fix this, you've got to find a way to collaborate with others through humility. So that's all I have for today, but yeah, thanks guys.